Thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I'm Joy Limnacker, joined today by attorney Jamara Edward Shipp. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So obviously the breaking news that we've been following today, the death of OJ Simpson at the age of 76. He had been battling prostate cancer. His family was by his side or with him when he actually passed away. But, you know, when we think of the life of O.J. Simpson, who was, of course, an incredible NFL player for 11 seasons with the NFL, an actor, a television broadcaster, all of that, unfortunately, was quite overshadowed by his murder trial for his, he was acquitted for the murder of his ex-wife and her friend, Ron Goldman. But I want to ask you, we were just discussing, did his trial really change public interest about the criminal justice system?
I think two trials in the 90s were monumental in how the justice system in America was perceived by many of the general public. That would be the Rodney King trial, in which there was videotaped evidence of these officers beating a young black man, and they were acquitted of using excessive force. So then you have this O.J. Simpson trial that has a mountain of circumstantial evidence, let's be clear about that, and he is acquitted. And I think that showed that there was a referendum on the state of race relations in America. In the Rodney King trial, it was a majority white jury. In the O.J. Simpson trial, it was a majority black jury. And I think they kind of showed that, we have a referendum on not only how these race relations are in Los Angeles, but in America as a whole.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And later on, even though, Mr. Simpson was acquitted of the murders of his ex-wife and her friend, he was actually convicted and spent 9 years in prison for, armed robbery and kidnapping in Las Vegas. And many legal observers said, well, that was actually sort of a jury trying to pay him back for what they perceived as an unjust acquittal in the murder case. What do you think of that?
I agree wholeheartedly. This is one of my earliest memories of law school when I was with the esteemed professor Tim Floyd, and we sat down and discussed how him being convicted and sentenced for basically stealing back his own property, it was saying, okay, we didn't get you for the murder of Nicole Simpson Brown and her alleged lover at the time, but we will get you for this robbery, and we will try to give you the max on this. So yes, I agree that it was almost like a second bite at the apple for the general public.
Well, it's an interesting, definitely an interesting idea, but if that were the case, it's not justice, right? And because that trial was supposed to be for that particular crime. So, but that, not to say, that's the thing is, everyone knew what happened in the murder trial of O.J. Simpson, because as we're talking about, the eyes of the nation were watching, and it essentially changed it created live trial coverage, in my opinion. It essentially, in some ways, made Court TV, which is, my former news network, nearly 150 million people were watching as the verdict came down. Do you think that maybe it changed, even in the legal community, just kind of, I guess, the perception of the public?
I think in the legal community that a lot of people were more mindful of how they may be seen by the general public, especially when they are either prosecuting a case or defending a case. This is one of the earliest of my memories, actually seeing lawyers doing their job. So I was I think roughly in the second grade when I watched the verdict be handed down, and in that time in between the verdict being handed down and the chase with A.C. Cowlings and O.J. Simpson, we got to see Johnny Cochran in action. We got to see Marsha Clark, Chris Darden, all of these what are now household names and were household names in 1995. We got to see them in action, and that kind of shed light on what the actual legal process looks like for many Americans who had never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, and you talked about the racial element, you talked about the backdrop with Rodney King and the jury makeup, but also, I mean, now you're bringing up, prominent black attorneys as well. And I guess my question to you is, how did it sort of inform the attention to race at trial, whether it's selecting attorneys of color or jurors of color? How did that impact things?
So I believe that there is a well-known saying by Mr. Simpson, "I'm not black, I'm OJ."
That's
But
right.
again, this is one of those situations in which the lawyers had to come in and say, listen, Mr. Simpson, you are a black man in America who has been accused of killing two white people. So it kind of brought attention to the fact that sometimes there is another system of justice depending on the crime that you are accused of committing. And I think that his lawyers did a great job. I think he did a great job in choosing the lawyers that he chose because he knew deep down that, this was going to be a referendum on whether or not he was seen as OJ Simpson, All-American Heisman winner, or OJ Simpson, the minority who is accused of killing two white people.
Well, and because you're an attorney and I'm a non-practicing attorney, so I guess
You're still an attorney. You don't have to put the qualifier on it.
But I'm very curious about just kind of about the attorneys and kind of the identity politics, if you will, that played into that, because you had a black male co-prosecutor, Christopher Darden, against a black male criminal defense attorney, Johnny Cochran. And I wondered, kind of what are the dynamics there? What thought process went into maybe the district attorney's office in choosing Chris Darden? Do you have any insight on that, and really how it works in regular trials for non-famous people?
Okay, so to unpack all of that, I do believe that the district attorney's office of Los Angeles County decided to put him in that position, the prosecutor in that position, because they wanted to try and say, okay, we don't want it to seem like we're just, coming down on this black man by putting two white prosecutors against him. And
Right.
they wanted to show that, this isn't something that should be a racial thing. However, this is the same office that, got an acquittal or was part of the acquittal process for these three officers who were videotaped actually committing the crime. So it didn't play well. Not into the minds of those jurors who still remembered the Rodney King riots, who still remembered watching the video over and over again, who probably had stories of their own with dealing with the LAPD. It didn't play well with them. So again, Chris Darden, he is memorialized in few songs that I know of in which he is seen as a sellout. And ultimately, that kind of followed him throughout his career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's a difficult, I would imagine, in his position, and other attorneys who are in similar positions, it's a difficult position to be in, because he is a prosecutor, he's trying to do his job, but, he also has another identity as a black man in America. So, I can't imagine it would be easy to reconcile those two things. Any other thoughts, on how this trial even impacted, I guess, accessibility to courtroom coverage, for instance?
I think the 10 months that America was enthralled by this whole trial, I think that showed to not only the benefactors or the stakeholders in Court TV that this was actually a lucrative market, and that people were actually generally excited about these types of things. I mean, we go from 50 years before, where people would crowd the steps of the courthouse to go watch these sensational trials, to now being able to watch it from the privacy of their own homes and have their own, commentary without being judged. So, yes, I think it changed the landscape as far as the media coverage of trials, and I think it showed that it can be a lucrative thing for some of these channels that have gone on to do that.
And I think a positive is that, it really increased the public interest in the criminal justice system, because it's something that really does impact all of us at one time or another. And I mean, I think that's a positive that came out of it, is that people became more interested in learning how it works.
I would agree. I would agree wholeheartedly.
Before we let you go, I know you're a busy man. I do want to ask you about this new development. So this is about Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, and we know that he had been essentially eyed for prosecution related to the election interference case, being one of 16 Republicans who acted as alleged fake electors for former President Trump. So now the big development today, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia has announced that they are actually investigating him. In fact, I wonder if I should even play the voicemail for our viewers.
You should.
Okay, let me play this voicemail. So I'm calling the Prosecuting Attorney Council of Georgia, and I'm going to let you listen.
I think you said George. Is that correct? Say yes or no. Or
No.
press 1 for yes or 2 for no.
No.
Things that happen when we go live.
Did you say George Christopher?
Oh my goodness. But I do want everyone to hear this. Let me try again. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
This is what
Thank you
happens
for
with
calling
live.
the Prosecuting
Just listen.
Attorneys Council of Georgia. On July 25th, 2022, Judge Robert McBurney filed an order recusing Atlanta Judicial Circuit District Attorney Fani Willis and her office from the special grand jury investigation of Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. The Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia has been appointed to handle the matter pursuant to OCGA Section 15-18-5. In accordance with State Bar Rule 3.8, special responsibilities of a prosecutor and pending litigation, no further comments will be made at this time.
So that gives you an idea of the level of interest. You call the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, and that's the voicemail. Apparently, that's what most people are calling about. They want to know is, are they handling the case against Burt Jones? And, well, they've got the answer recorded for everybody to hear.
It's almost like it's a subliminal shot to Fani Willis by saying, hey, pursuant to the rules, we're not going to comment on it. Kind of taking a shot at, when she made her speech at Big Bethel AME Church. So I wouldn't be surprised, me personally, if this doesn't go anywhere, that they just say, well, they were following what they thought was good case law, and therefore we don't see that any criminal charges should be filed. We have to remember that this is the same prosecutor that chose not to pursue any charges against the two officers who were indicted for murdering Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta, Georgia at a Wendy's on University Ave. So people should keep that in mind and not to get their hopes up too high for just a bombshell development.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Attorney Jamara Edwards-Shipp, joining us with analysis. We so appreciate it. For our viewers, just want to encourage you to download our free Atlanta News First mobile news app. You can get updates on all of this, all of our top stories and breaking news. Of course, the weather sent right to your phone. Have a great day.